Okay, we're gonna look up something together. We're gonna go like down the fucking rabbit hole. I don't know. I need to be more modest, I guess. You need me to button the top button on my collar? All right. I'm looking here at this picture of these protesters in the Maidan. I think that's how you say it. It's just like in the Ukraine, which I understand some people dispute it being all the Ukraine. And they got this flag. But I'm getting confused because I'm going to look this up right now. Is the flag of similar? It kind of is. And yet it's distinct. There's the old flag. I saw it before. There was an old, almost like imperial flag of here it is. Is that it? Except it had a dragon. So let me look up the other flag because I could get it wrong. See, one day I was at somebody's place. It was a bicycle shop. I thought he was my friend. And while I'm sitting, there it is. It's the emblem. Okay, so I got it mixed up, but now I got it correct. And I'm sitting there on the floor of his shop. He used to get angry at me about sitting on the floor. I tried to explain it to him. For whatever reason, he didn't seem to understand. I'm perfectly comfortable sitting on the floor, just so you know. Sitting on the chair is kind of an imposition. I was sitting on the floor, and I started getting this information. This like very significant information was coming to me about them saying that I came from the Silk Road. And I'd had these dreams before. And I saw this flag, this banner I saw it. And I'm like, well, I've never seen that before. So I had a phone at the time, and I'm looking at the phone. And while I'm looking on the phone, I'm looking stuff up. I didn't look actively at that, but I saw it was on Wikipedia, but then I saw other sources. And I'm like, wow, is this the flag of Kazakhstan? Well, what's Kazakhstan? So I started, and then at some point, it went to Uzbekistan. So there was some dispute between Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. But it had this very specific, this specific kind, and I thought it was a dragon, but it had this kind of like a furling, this kind of like flourish. And it had this light blue background, and it had this like yellow, this like gold flourish. And this was almost like a flag or a banner that was in the background of all of this really intense, dense information that was processing through me that day. And then they said, you've captured it. And I'm like, what? And it's like, you've got the whole system. And I was like, what? And I didn't know what they meant because I thought it was something similar to these other things that I've had for many years about the Templars and the Templar system. And the understanding that when the Knights Templar would escort pilgrims, that there was a specific kind of encoding that they had around basically inventories of the people that they were transporting or they were accompanying on these pilgrimages. And that this was part of their duty when they transported people was to perform this role of safeguarding their property and things that would have been as tribute or that would have been part of whatever was required as part of the pilgrimage. And so they had this role. And then when they got to the other side, and there was a system involved in that kind of cryptology or in that kind of whole process of like networks and protocols in order to assure safe passage. So I was like, well, I mean, what if I actually came from a cultural paradigm or a cultural background that I understood I do literally, where some people in my family history were actually a part of that culture way back in the day, that our job was, it was a holy duty to escort pilgrims to the holy sites. And so there's all these things you need to do in order to do that safely, including every once in a while having to deal with ruffians, dealing with bandits, dealing with Mongols, Mughal armies, dealing with the fanatics of another sort, all these things you got to deal with, right? Well, what if they had something similar in the Silk Road? And or what if some of those people made pilgrimages to other holy sites that weren't just in the Middle East, right? And they literally had to use the Silk Route, and they were literally assisting people on pilgrimages through the Silk Route. And so while I'm checking out things on social media, it's possible that I'm actually having a spiritual experience. And that this is something that it started happening again after I got off the drugs, by the way, where I understood and believed that I was tapping into light codes that I'd already accessed and that were already a part of what was going on, that had a variety of kinds of information about things that we have come to this planet with at this time. And so when they said you've got the whole system, and what they were talking about is that these are processes or protocols associated with what would have been required for safe passage for pilgrims that were on the Silk Road. And so I had not had the experience of the specifics related to the Silk Road. My geo references were further east, right? Or were further west. But then what happens? Well, no, it's not spiritual at all. The guys from the Silk Roads, some black market, internet, alternative drug dealing economy, some, cyber narco crypto scheme got busted. And it's kind of similar to what happened when I was in Houston. That concurrent to what I was experiencing and conscious of, actual law enforcement, presumably actual law enforcement, was making a bust on something. And I was experiencing what I was experiencing in my real life. But other people that are absolutely qualified, including in intersecting with what could otherwise be a spiritual experience or could be some sort of connection with people who do have actual authentic spiritual experiences but have had our ancestries and our legacies expropriated from us so that they could be accessible or reconfigured by, I don't know, narcos. That something got triggered. And so while this was happening, and so I've been having this banner specifically and of what turned out to be Kazakhstan. But now I'm getting confused because I'm looking at this picture of the Ukraine, and the flag of the Ukraine has the same color scheme, except it's missing the emblem, right? It's missing the flourish. It's just, they have a coat of arms, but that's not what I saw. What I saw was more elegant. It wasn't so angular. Now, it's possible it could be an old standard. And that's what I understood. It was an old standard. And then around that time, I started finding this information that there had been a city in the area that's now called Uzbekistan that was comparable to the sort of pyramids that were in other parts of the world. And they weren't as high, and they weren't as big. And that what had happened is sediment and land had actually gone over them. So they just looked like mounds. They just looked like big hills. And then somehow somebody figured out that it was actually a covered ruin. It was actually a ruinas, It was like one of those ruined pyramids that was in that area. And that this was, and then I started looking at how the architecture of a lot of cities in places like Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan is not so different from the architecture in other cities that aren't associated with being from that part of the world. I bring this up because right now they're talking about this Silk Road guy getting busted. And the president might be considering giving him clemency. Well, here's the fucking problem. The Federal Reserve just fucking spent the entire goddamn year creating a black market economy through the fucking Federal Reserve. And not only this year, but last year. They started it with the Federal Open Markets Committee when they had that bullshit report about how they were going to rewrite the indexes. They were going to change the indices for certain countries. They were going to spend 1 year, which was 2019, with the actual country, and then they were going to swap that country out with another country. But as they're swapping out or swapping in the other country, that country is going to be writing on the indexed information from the country they're taking out. They're replacing entire national legacies with what? With what? Anything I had that was spiritually connected got recharacterized as the cheapest, grossest bullshit for this fucking crypto economy. And these assholes think they're entitled to patent it and copyright it and trademark it. And ultimately all they fucking seem to do with it is use it to distribute biological fucking weapons and try to normalize people into accepting drugs as a substitute for pretty much anything else. It's not acceptable. What did the DOJ do with the system it got from that Silk Road bust? Did they just allow for a couple of people on the inside to get their special deal hooked up while they maybe flip some penalties through their broker? And then they literally got the fucking Federal Reserve to back it While the Federal Reserve financed the fucking Congress to launch a goddamn biological attack on its own fucking country, in concert with a bunch of jackasses from other countries. You know what the worst fucking part of this shit is? Is it fucking true that Joseph Biden is gonna fucking put a former fucking executive from Disney in the fucking major position to deal with fucking China? So your fucking punk ass is literally going to fucking executivize the goddamn bitch down racket. You're fucking literally gonna reward these bullshit police and their fucking crime all over the goddamn country. We're creating women they intend to fucking murder in order to open up liquidity. And that's gonna be your fucking China policy? You're not gonna get away with that. You fucking put the nail in your own fucking coffin. It was bad enough you did that disgusting slave master shit with the fucking DOD. You really fucking think you're gonna get away with this? No, you're fucking not.